Chapter 2. Are we on the same page? Blackbat headquarters. Hacking simulation room. Red light from the monitors glared across her face as she zoned in, eyes locked on the code. Her hands went across the keys, tapping out a rhythm to match the whirring fans. The scent of her third energy drink mingled with the vague scent of sweat. Proof of the hours she'd spent immersed in this digital world. This was her amusement park, a world of code and algorithms, firewalls and exploits. In the heart of the unhackable security system, she found peace in the challenge, her mind laser-focused on the streams of data flashing across the screens. As the clock ticked down, the pressure mounted. She flitted between the monitors, analyzing the complex network of defenses, seeking that minuscule gap that would grant her access. Moisture from concentration gathered at her hairline. Physical evidence of the mental exertion required to breach this elite system. Come on, you stupid hoe. Behind the one-way glass, the evaluators watched her every move, their looks acute and unblinking. She could feel their scrutiny and their judgment, but she refused to let it distract her. Instantly, the main screen flashed a warning. Unauthorized access attempt detected. Countermeasures jumped to life, closing ports and rerouting her connection through a web of proxy servers. The system fought back, determined to ward off her intrusion, but she only smirked, undeterred by the challenge. She'd expected nothing less from a system like this. Cracking her knuckles, she poured herself into crafting another coding exploit. Line after line of obscure script rained down the screens as she tunneled deeper, navigating through blind alleys and tripwires that seemed to appear at every turn. Her mind operated on a higher plane, dancing between the ones and zeros with supernatural power. As the countdown neared its end, her terminal emulator ticked with rapid-fire text, a representation of her most sophisticated payload yet. A remote administration tool of her own design, crafted to hijack the core system kernel and grant unconstrained access. With 30 seconds remaining, the firewalls crumbled one by one, their defenses no match for her assault. 15 seconds and root access was achieved, the countermeasures falling silent as she seized control. 5 seconds, and that cocky-ass, ear-to-ear grin said it all. She nailed it. The buzzer sounded right as her fingers dropped. She raised her arms high, letting out an excited shout as the enormity of her success hit her. Through the one-way glass, the stick-in-the-ass evaluators nodded in approval, their pens scratching across notepads as they made their final assessments. Kicking back her feet and relaxing, she knew that she was ready for whatever. She hacked the unhackable, proving her worth as a master of the digital domain. Ryan Wilder, the badass hacker, had made her mark. Blackbat headquarters, combat training facility. Her heart raced as she sneaked through the dark hallway, the soft patter of rubber bullets in her rifle nearly drowned out by the beats of her heart thumping in her ears. The final test was on, and adrenaline flowed through her veins, making everything seem sharper and clearer. At the corner, she flattened herself against the wall and took a stabilizing breath. In one motion, she peeked around the edge and zeroed in on the two human-shaped targets milling around the next intersection. A predatory grin pulled at her lips. She'd been waiting for this all night. Dropping into a crouch, she slipped around the corner, moving like a panther on the prowl. Rolling her shoulders, she raised the rifle, her finger resting on the trigger. At 15 yards, 2 pops rang out. The targets collapsed, going still. Tango down, she said into her comms, low and leveled. Oscar Mike. With focus, she forged ahead, sweeping through rooms with the savage efficiency ingrained in her by countless hours of training. Slicing the pie, hitting the corners, spotting threats. It was all muscle memory now. Her body moving on autopilot while her mind stayed razor sharp. Hard light spilled from an open doorway up ahead. Dropping to a knee, she scanned the room beyond. The central chamber, her final stop. Her rifle was gripped even tighter. A shadow detached from the far wall. She held her fire, waiting for a clear shot. The figure stepped into the light. One of the sim attackers, there to make this even more challenging. He saw her and opened up, rubber rounds peppering the air. She held steady, letting them blow past while she tracked him with focus. The instant he stopped to reload, she pounced. Launching into a combat roll, her armor took the brunt of the rubber bullets. Hitting the deck in a crouch, the rifle came up and immediately spat fire. The sim hit the ground and didn't get back up. It was silent. The only sound heard was her shabby breathing. She stood, scanning her weapon across the room. All clear, drill complete. Through the observation glass, people in suits trading impressed looks were seen scribbling notes. She smiled as she popped the mag and flicked the safety on. Damn right, she'd nailed it. She was Sophie fucking Moore after all. Why should we trust someone with your background? Spoken softly, the shrink's hard-hitting question made Ryan feel like she was under verbal assault. She tensed up like she was bracing for impact, her eyes locked with the doctor, poker face firmly in place. This was the moment of truth. The do-or-die point. Screw this up, and it was game over. No cushy agency gig, no shot at a clean slate, just a first-class ticket back to the box. Ryan sucked in a lungful of air, trying to keep her heart from pounding clean out of her chest. Couldn't let them see her sweat, not now. I'm not gonna sugarcoat it. I've done some dumb shit. Got mixed up with a bad crowd as a teen. Hacking, running scams, ... IT was a thrill, you know, and it sure as hell beat flipping burgers after seminars. The psychiatrist scribbled away, eyes glued to her notepad. Ryan continued on. Shit escalated after a while. I got in deep with some heavy hitters. Swiping data, cracking corporate vaults, the works. Long as I had cash for new gear and could keep upping my game, I didn't care about the fallout. She raked a hand through her curls, frowning at the memories. Even years later, she felt shame. Well, you can guess how that played out. The feds finally kicked down my door and had me dead to rights on a whole laundry list of charges. I was looking at a 2-decade stretch. Easy. Her mind flashed back to that night. The bangs and flashes, the barked orders, face planting on the floor in cuffs while they tore her stuff to shreds. She'd never felt so low. So completely and utterly screwed. During those first weeks behind bars, Ryan was at the bottom of the pit. All her cash and toys were snatched up, her name dragged through the mud, and nothing but those dirty cell walls to stare down night after night. Grappling with self-hatred, wondering how she could have thrown away her golden ticket, her once-in-a-generation brain. And for what? A few years of excitement playing cyber cowboy, all to wind up alone in the joint. Rock bottom was where the agency found her, dangling a lifeline, a way to haul herself up out of the hole, find something to live for again. This was uncharted territory, stuff she'd never said out loud. That's when the agency came knocking, spelled it all out for me. I could take my chances rotting in a cage, or I could put my skills to work and try to do some good for once. Serve my country. All that red, white, and blue jazz. The doctor quirked a brow at the slick remark, but kept silent. Hey, I won't feed you some bullshit line about seeing the light. I took the deal because it was a get-out-of-jail-free card. Simple as that. A shot at a life that didn't mean constantly waiting for that next tap on my shoulder. Ryan gave the shrink a hard, intimidating stare, trying to burn a hole through their neutral disguise. But I'm telling you, something changed once I got in the mix here. Seeing what I could do with this gift. Using it to keep people safe instead of bleeding them dry. Call it selfish if you want, but I want to keep doing that. I want a chance to make it right. The doctor held her eyes for a long minute, pen scratching out endlessly. Finally, a brusque nod. I appreciate your honesty, Miss Wilder. I'll pass along my findings to the director. Stepping out of the glass mirror office, Ryan had an itchy feeling about being exposed, all her fears on display. Her last best hope, all writing on what some random had written on that damn piece of paper. All she could do was pray like hell that her desperate plea had hit home. Tell me about your mother. This was always the worst part. Ripping open old wounds, showing her soul to some clinical stranger who'd probably heard it all before. Sophie let out a heavy sigh, her shoulders sagging under the weight of the psychologist's eyes. My mom, she never really got on board with my way of life. I came out to her right after high school, just shy of my 18th birthday. Diane is... She paused, twitching her lip. Let's say she's got her heels dug in when it comes to religion. Having a lesbian for a daughter, probably her personal version of hell on earth. Sophie had to physically stop herself from squirming in her seat. That night, God, I don't think I'll ever forget it. We got into a screaming match and things escalated really fast. The shit that came out of her mouth, she called me a pervert, said I was spitting in God's face, that I'd fry for eternity for my unnatural feelings. Each word cut deeper than any knife ever could, shredding her heart to ground meat and coming from the one person who was supposed to love her no matter what. But at that moment, it wasn't only her mother Sophie lost. Her whole sense of self, any ounce of confidence in who she was destroyed just like that. I walked out. I ended up couch surfing with friends for weeks till I could scrape together enough for some rat trap apartment and a dead-end gig to keep the lights on. My mother acted like I didn't exist. That's how devastated she was by my lifestyle choice. Her throat bobbed with a hard swallow. We didn't talk for years after that. I was a ghost to her. Might as well have been 6 feet under. It wasn't till I got back from my first deployment that she finally pulled her head out of her ass and reached out. She fixed her eyes on a random spot across the room, not really seeing anything. Even then, she couldn't hack it. Oh, she was real proud of her daughter, the big shot soldier. But the second I dropped a girl's name, shut down tighter than a clam, changed the subject so fast it'd make you dizzy. She had this look on her face as if she'd just stepped in dog shit. For years after, the disgrace ate her alive. Growing up hearing that her sexuality was a perversion, a one-way trip to hell in the eyes of God and everybody else. Wrapping her head around being a gay woman, where her mother still saw it as wrong and filthy, was the hardest thing she'd ever done. It wasn't until she found her tribe, a tight-knit crew of trustworthy friends diving headfirst into the local LGBTQ scene, that Sophie started to break those chains of self-hatred. Bit by bit, she pieced herself back together, reclaiming her identity as an out and proud lesbian. Her mother's poisonous words slowly lost their venom. So I cut her off after I got hurt. I finished my tours and got into private security. Figured if she couldn't handle the real me, she didn't deserve to be in my life. Period. We've been playing this game of cat and mouse ever since she'll come sniffing around every few months, leaving these blubbery voicemails about wanting to fix things. But the second I mention anything even remotely gay, radio silence. She chuckled darkly, dragging a hand through her hair. You know, when I told her I'd left the Crows because of their bigotry and unfair treatment of the underprivileged, she was pissed. But it wasn't out of some noble sense of justice. Oh, no. She was mad because in her mind, me walking away from that high-paying security gig was basically me turning my back on a perfect way to stay deep in that closet she so desperately wanted me trapped in. Her daughter taking a moral stand? Couldn't have that. Better to keep cashing those fat checks and pretend the whole lesbian thing was just a phase, right? Sophie felt tears but kept them at bay. She's my mom, you know. The one person who's supposed to have your back no matter what. But she can't see past her own hate and ignorance when it comes to me. I've done everything she could possibly want. Killer career, money in the bank, respect out the ass. Her eyes dropped to the floor. But after leaving the Crows, freelancing wasn't exactly bringing in the money I was used to. This elite program with the agency's resources and stability, it's a chance to really make something of myself while staying true to my values. Yet it's never going to be enough because, in her eyes, I'm still broken. When she finally ran out of steam, the doctor set her pen down. Thank you for your honesty, Miss Moore. I think we're done here. As Sophie walked out of that room, she felt like she'd been put through the Twilight Zone. The fluorescent bulbs buzzed overhead while Julia guided Ryan through the complicated corridors of Blackbat's top-tier headquarters. She couldn't believe her eyes, staring in wonder at the flashy, modern complex. Nothing like the raggedy hangouts in her usual rotation. Damn, they really went all out since my last visit, she said, trailing her fingers along a biometric scanner. Julia was a part of the recruitment team and was in charge of showing potential enlist around. She knew Ryan from the smaller task force and wasn't surprised at all to see her training for the elite group. Well, you're playing with the big leagues now, Wilder. Or should I say the big girls? Ryan snorted, but her crack was cut short as they entered a computer lab. Rows of cutting-edge machines glowed under the blue light, their screens alive with intricate designs. It took every ounce of restraint to keep her fingers from touching. As they walked, Julia scrutinized her. So let's talk about relationships. Have you ever been married? Me? Nah, I'm more of a love 'em and ditch 'em kind of gal. Commitment phobia, eh? Her smile faltered. Unwanted memories of Angelique resurfaced. The passion, the betrayal, the bitter end. She shook her head, expelling the thoughts. Let's just say I've got a knack for picking the wrong ones. Plus, I know I'm a handful. I'm not sure any woman would know what to do with me. Ocean led Sophie through training rooms in another wing of the complex. Punching bags thudded and weights clanged. Not too shabby, she said, watching a group of agents spar on the mats. Cream of the crop, these folks. But you're no stranger to hardcore training yourself, right? Ocean asked. Sophie gave a non-committal shrug. I've been around the block a time or two. A ball-buster like you? I bet love often plays second fiddle to ambition, huh? Her stride paused for a second. Memories of soured romances paraded through her mind, lovers baffled by her passion, her fire. It's messy. I'll bet. But riddle me this. When shit hits the fan with your partner, are you more of a work it out together type? Or do you like to untangle the knots solo first? I guess. Flying solo's always been my comfort zone. Opening up, sharing the load, it doesn't come easy. What's the story there? He coaxed. Learn damn quick that banking on other people can be a real kick in the ass. Safer to keep those walls high, to handle your own business. Ocean hummed to himself. So you ever think about putting down roots, finding that one person to do life with? Julia glanced over at Ryan as they walked through the drone hangar. Me? Plain house? Yeah, that's rich. I'm not exactly the commitment type, in case you hadn't noticed. Hey, you never know. Sometimes the people you least expect can throw you for a loop. And let's be real, a catch like you. I'm betting there's plenty of ladies who'd put up with your special brand of batshit if it meant keeping you around. Julia's smile was all too knowing. Ryan's mind went to all the girls who'd been drawn in by her wild streak, only to get burned when they flew too close to the sun. Commitment and me, we've never really seen eye to eye. Always feels like I'm waiting for things to go sideways, you know? I get it. Letting someone in really in, IT quote, S, scary as hell. especially when you've taken a few hits. But answer me this. If the right girl came along, someone who got you, flaws and all, would you take the plunge? Ryan chewed the question over. Building something real with someone, a future ... IT, had always felt like a pipe dream, reserved for people with their shit a lot more together than her. But here, walking next to Julia, surrounded by Blackbat's deadly tech, a tiny spark of want came to life in her chest. Maybe it was time to start dreaming a new dream. Yeah, Ryan said, so soft she could barely hear herself over the machinery's noise. Yeah, I think I would. For the right person, I'd give it a shot. Atta girl, and hey, maybe your dream girl is right around the corner. Crazier things have happened, yeah. Facts, Ryan acknowledged with a snort. But let's not put the cart before the horse here. White picket fences ain't exactly my style. So no putting down roots? Starting a family? Popping out a couple of rugrats? Ryan's eyes bugged out in exaggerated horror. Rugrats? Me? Do you even know me? I'd be the world's worst mom. Nah, I bet you'd be a natural. Picture it, a little mini Ryan running around, raising hell and hacking the neighbor's Wi-Fi. Oh yeah, that's all the world needs. Another generation of little me's leaving a trail of destruction. Ryan cocked her head, pretending to mull it over. Although, I have heard that kids are one hell of a tax write-off. Maybe I should give this whole parenting gig a second look. Hate to break it to you, but that's not how it works, babe. Ryan threw up her hands. Hey, a girl's gotta work every angle she can. And it's not like I've ever spent a hot second around kids. But how hard can it be? They're basically just tiny drunk people, right? Oh, honey. You have no idea what you'd be in for. Probably not. But hey, that's the fun of it, right? Jumping in ass first and making it up as you go. Ryan flashed her $1 million smile. I swear that brain of yours is something else, Julia said, chuckling fondly. Impressive, isn't it? Blackbat spares no expense when it comes to keeping our operatives in top form. In the medical wing, Ocean watched as Sophie examined the high-tech equipment with a critical eye. Sophie nodded, but her mind was elsewhere. The earlier question about relationships had stirred up long-buried dreams, hopes she'd pushed aside in the pursuit of her career. You know, Ocean said casually, I've been thinking about what you said about love taking a back seat. Do you see yourself ever settling down, getting married? Her hand stilled on the medical scanner she'd been examining. She'd asked herself this question countless times in the quiet moments between deployment and training. I've always wanted a family, Sophie confessed. Someone to come home to build a life with. That's a beautiful dream. But balancing that with a career like this can't be easy. No, it's not, she sighed, her shoulders slumping. I've seen so many relationships fall apart. So many people are unable to handle the demands of this life. It's made me wonder if it's even possible to have both. Ocean leaned against the counter. It's a challenge, no doubt about it. But I've also seen it work when both partners are committed and understand the sacrifices and the rewards. How do you make it work, though? How do you build a marriage, a family, when you're constantly putting your life on the line, when you can't even tell your spouse the truth about what you do? It takes a special kind of person, Sophie. Someone who can love you for who you are, not only what you do. Someone who understands that the secrets, the danger, they're all part of the package. Sophie thought of the women she'd loved, the ones who'd walked away when the reality of her life had become too much to bear. I want that, she whispered, her voice raw. I want someone who can accept me, all of me, even the parts I can't share with the world. By the time it was wrapping up, their true colors were peeking through. Each probing question, each pointed comment, wore down the carefully constructed fronts they had striven so diligently to uphold. For Ryan, the funny quips and easy laughter that usually came so naturally began to feel more like a flimsy shield, a desperate attempt to deflect from her painful truths, no matter how hard she tried to bury them. The wounds inflicted by Angelique's betrayal and the deep-seated fear of allowing anyone else to get too close kept bubbling up, unwanted and unwelcome. Sophie, too, found her usually even-tempered composure starting to crumble. The crushing weight of her family's disapproval, the bone-deep loneliness of always having to be the pillar of strength, it all threatened to come banging down around her. She grasped at the threads of her training, the stilled discipline that had seen her through countless trials, but even that began to feel like a fragile lifeline. When they reached the end of the tour, both women were left feeling naked, all their guards and masks snatched off. It was like Blackbat had taken a scalpel to their carefully constructed personas and performed surgery as meticulously as Dr. McDreamy. They settled in their respective conference rooms, each awaiting the next step, feeling trepidation and anticipation. Lost in their own thoughts, Ryan and Sophie began to wonder if they truly possessed the endurance for the challenges that lay ahead. Sophie sat straight, her spine stiff against the chair, as she faced Luke Fox's formidable presence. With an intentional slide, he pushed a manila folder across the desk, its trajectory stopping just short of her fingertips. His expression remained detached. "You've shown promise, Agent. But now your true trial begins now. Successfully complete this mission, and you'll be rewarded handsomely. $250,000. She almost choked on her spit at the mention of the substantial sum, but she maintained her composure and resisted the temptation to immediately dig into the folder's contents. "And what might this be?" "Your inaugural mission," Luke responded. "That folder contains intel on a mark, a target, that you are tasked with eliminating." 10 minutes later, in another room, Ryan wiggled in her seat, a nervous wreck under the intense scrutiny of the same imposing figure. "So you're the famous Luke, huh?" Ryan broke the silence, trying to project confidence. "I've heard a lot about you." His only response was a deep frown. After a tense silence, he spoke at last. "Your preliminary evaluation showed potential. Hence your provisional acceptance into Blackbat elite operations." Back in Sophie's meeting, she kept her expression neutral, even as her heart rate picked up. "Neutralize, you mean?" "Permanently," he confirmed, Luke's eyes boring into hers. "You have 48 hours to observe the target's movements, then strike." In Ryan's meeting, Luke slid an identical manila folder toward her, its path mirroring the one in Sophie's meeting. "In that folder are details about the target. Complete the mission, and you'll be compensated $250,000. $250,000? Damn. I had no idea y'all were throwing around that kind of cash, and here I thought I was making a little change in the minor leagues." She tried to play it cool, but her shaky hands betrayed her as she cracked open the folder for a glimpse inside. "That folder holds the key to your target," he elaborated to Ryan. "A mark that you are required to kill." "Wait, what? Hacking and infiltration were one thing, but outright assassination?" In both meetings, Luke leaned forward, his elbows coming to rest on the desk. A gesture of intentional intimidation. "Failure is not an option. If you don't succeed, you're out. For good," he told Ryan explicitly. This first assignment could be her last. If she fails, it's not just her job on the line, it's her freedom. She knows all too well that the only reason she's not rotting in a cell right now is because the agency saw potential in her. But that deal comes with strings. Strings that Luke is all too happy to remind her of. "Remember, Wilder," he said coldly and clipped. "You're here because we gave you a second chance. But make no mistake, if you can't deliver, and if you prove to be more trouble than you're worth," he doesn't need to spell it out. The insinuation was crystal clear. "I want to make sure you understand the full scope of what's at risk here, Moore," Luke stated. "If you fail this mission, if you're a liability rather than an asset, Blackbat will have no choice but to cut ties with you, completely." Sophie felt goosebumps run up her arm. "Cut ties? How exactly?" "We have certain arrangements with foreign agencies, agreements to exchange personnel who have outlived their usefulness." "You mean you'd trade me away to another country, like some kind of pawn?" "If it comes to that," Luke confirmed, "Blackbat looks after its own, but we can't afford to carry dead weight. Plus, you know too much about what we do from today alone. If you fail, if you become a burden, you'll be of more value to us as a bargaining chip than as an operative." 2 folders, 1 shared fate. A reminder of the dangerous path they had chosen.